Okay, just want to thank all of you for being here today. What a crowd. Standing room only. I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here today. I see our landlord here at the UMass, the Chancellor, the President of UMass, Marty Meehan, is here in the rear. We want to thank him. All that he does. Thank the UMass school system, the flagship of higher ed, public higher ed, all of New England, maybe the Northeast, but he's done a terrific job and continues to do a great job.
Never been called a landlord, though.
Well, you're the landlord of this room here, and I don't think there's a better function room in this city than the UMass Club. It's just fantastic. So he's got great staff here. I see our governor is here, Bill Weld. Always a pleasure to have you, Governor. Always. Oh, you keep the title, Governor. You keep the title. So I just want to begin also by thanking NetScout, who is the sponsor of this morning's event, a great member of the New England Council. They're a cybersecurity company headquarters in Westford, which of course is in the representative's district, and not only is in the district, but she's been there, she knows the people there, and she also knows the great work that they are doing. The company is represented today by Stephanie Lambert, who serves as the Vice President, the Assistant General Counsel, Chief Compliance Officer, and she will introduce the Congresswoman in just a few moments. Needless to say, 2026 has gotten off to a great start for the New England Council, and we have a couple of busy weeks coming up, to say the least. Today is our second of 4 events this week. Yesterday we were in New Hampshire for a very similar event with Congressman Chris Pappas, the 1st Congressional District. Thursday we'll be in Washington for a breakfast with the Congresswoman from the 2nd Congressional District in New Hampshire, Maggie Goodlander. And we'll wrap up the week back in New Hampshire, Politics and Eggs, with the Senator from Iowa, Senator Joni Ernst. We speak into New England Council, Politics and Eggs. Next Friday we'll be back here at the UMass Club for the next installment of the popular New England Innovate series. This time looking at some of the incredible innovation in our region focused on early detection of diseases. And the keynote speaker, Congressman Jim McGovern. In the coming weeks, look forward to seeing many of you as we leave Massachusetts, go north to Portland, Maine, where Senator Angus King will be speaking on March 16th. And then we'll go to next week down to Providence for Congressman Gabe Amo, who will be speaking at the New England Council on March 23rd. And of course, registration is open for our 2026 Washington Leaders Conference on May 13th and 14th. And we do hope that you will find time to join us. We almost had 300 people last year, and it's 2 days of informative programming and opportunities to connect with members of Congress and members of the United States Senate, staff, as well as fellow New England Council members, and meet people from the media. Just a great opportunity. Larry Zabar is involved with the sponsorship, and he always indicates he has one left. So if there's one person here who's interested, we'd be delighted to talk to you. But before I do introduce Stephanie, if I take a point of personal privilege, I just want to say this has been a hard time for the New England Council the last couple of months. As you know, Larry Zabar, who is the glue of the New England Council, keeps us all together. I have 30 years in the council, and he has 37, so he is truly the DNA of his body is New England Council. As you know, he suffered a tremendous loss with his partner in life, and I know that she's looking down, because Hope would always be the first here at all our events, because she'd be the first to volunteer. And so I know she's looking down, and she's smiling, saying that I'm in good hands, and I want you people to keep laughing and smiling, and take a picture of me, because you know she loved pictures and having a picture taken. But she had an appropriate name, Hope, because she gave hope to an awful lot of people. And I miss her, the staff misses her, and that's what's unique about the New England Council. It's a family. We're not just employees, we're a family. So when someone suffers a setback, we all suffer. And so that's it. Okay. So with that, we're going to have Stephanie Lambert now introduce with a very formal introduction of our very special guest.
Thank you very much, Jim. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank Jim and the New England Council for giving NetScout the opportunity to sponsor today's event with Congresswoman Lori Trahan. NetScout truly values its relationship with the New England Council, and today is another great example of how the Council brings people together. This morning is especially meaningful for us at NetScout because we have about 400 employees at our headquarters in Westford, which is proudly part of the 3rd Congressional District that Congresswoman Trahan represents. It was also our pleasure, not very long ago, to welcome the Congresswoman to our Westford offices. She spent time with our leadership team and learned more about our business and how we help our customers protect the connected world. Congresswoman, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to visit with us and for your interest in how we keep helping the connected world run smoothly. NetScout is a leading provider of observability, AI ops, cybersecurity, and something called DDoS, Distributed Denial of Service, attack protection solutions. We protect the connected world from cyber attacks and service disruptions globally. We take this very seriously. We call ourselves the guardians of the connected world. Today, about 90% of the world's largest enterprises and communications companies rely on us, and many of them are also members of the New England Council. So thank you all for joining us today. But beyond our technology, NetScout's employees give back to our communities with thousands of volunteer hours logged every year globally, with over 300 nonprofit organizations benefiting. Congresswoman Trahan has been a strong advocate for communities that she represents. She is currently serving her 4th term in Congress and sits on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. She also serves in House Democratic leadership as co-chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, a senior whip, and a member of the Democratic Steering and Policy Committee. NetScout is grateful for the work that Congresswoman Trahan does every day on behalf of the people and businesses in the 3rd Congressional District and across Massachusetts. As you can see, her popularity extends widely. We're honored to sponsor today's event, and we truly value everything that the New England Council does for its members and for the region. So with that, let me hand it back to Jim, who's going to begin the fireside chat with Congresswoman Trahan.
Welcome, Congresswoman. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I have some questions for the Congresswoman, and hopefully we may have an opportunity to ask the story of the day, of the week, and that is President Trump's military actions in Iran. I know that you issued a statement over the weekend, and I just had an opportunity to read it. Obviously, you are concerned about being drawn into another foreign conflict without congressional approval. Talk about your press release, expand on it, and also shed any light that you think Congress can play in the role.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for coming this morning. It's great to see all of you. I think this is more than a process argument. The war that the president has unilaterally started with Iran. It's about what overwhelmingly the American people believe, and that we don't engage in war, we don't start wars without an imminent threat to our national security, and as a last resort. So, negotiations were in the works. Those were short-circuited by the attack on Saturday morning. And I think the American people deserve answers. Whenever you bypass Congress and our constitutional authority to be the only body of our government to engage or declare war, I think the people that we represent expect us to go to Washington and get them the answers that they deserve. What was the imminent threat? How did negotiation break down? On what themes? And most importantly, what is the path forward? All of us have lived through the 20-year war, and no one wants to go back to that. The Secretary of War, Hegseth, he can stand up all he wants and say this is one and done, just like we did in Venezuela, but we know that's not the case in this region. We're already seeing the consequences. We're right now getting alerts on our phone that embassy officials haven't even been evacuated, and it sounds pretty much like they're just being directed to buses and crossings, but kind of like with a message of you're on your own. So we have a lot of questions. I'm flying down early before votes tomorrow so that I can attend a classified briefing. The Gang of Eight was in a briefing yesterday. The Senate is in earlier this afternoon. And I think across the board, not just the Democratic caucus, but also the Republican conference, who really supported this president because he did market himself as a peacetime president, no more endless wars, America first agenda. I think we all have questions. And look, I just want to say we've already lost 6 people, dozens injured. We don't take that lightly. Those are families who are suffering an enormous loss. Their loved one, their son or their daughter coming home in a USA flag draped coffin. This goes well beyond authorities and process and cost, which we know is going to be exorbitant. This is about making sure that we don't put our brave men and women in uniform in unnecessary danger.
Do you think Congress is losing its power in declaring war?
Well, I think that under Speaker Johnson's leadership, we have seen the biggest abdication of our authority and our power in our country's history, frankly. We have not had a single oversight hearing or just any sort of investigative type hearing after 2 American citizens were killed in Minneapolis. Not a hearing was called. Obviously there's a debate right now around funding for Department of Homeland Security. It is centered around CBP and ICE, and we do not have those answers, nor do we have any proper guardrails in place so that I, for one, could even vote for that funding, which I'm hearing Republicans are going to try to bring to the floor this week. And so, this Congress has just been a rubber stamp for whatever this president has ventured to do. And I think that's a really dangerous precedent. It's certainly dangerous right now because while we're all dealing with the voluminous alerts of all the things that are transpiring, there's also very long-term consequences to all of the things that we're not getting alerts for. I have deep concern with privacy, how government data is being used, that the government collects. There's a lot of things that are not being surfaced in the news that are happening in the dead of night, behind closed doors, that because Congress has abdicated their Article I authority, they're not even questioning. And we're really going to have to clean up, the mess that ensues over the long term because of that.
So there's a bipartisan House resolution on the war powers
Yes.
going to be announced. I mean, what are the chances of one passing the House and then the Senate? And obviously, the president's not going to sign it, but
Right.
start with the House.
You know, we're monitoring the House, as many of you probably know. After they lose Tom Massey, who is one of the lead sponsors of the resolution, they can only lose one more. And that's just how, that's just the margin that they've been dealing with this entire session. So a lot of things matter. Attendance matters. You know, things that, you know, we can certainly control on our side in terms of having, you know, full attendance and unanimity on our side in terms of voting yes on the resolution. We've already heard, you know, some Republicans who are very uncomfortable, you know, with the president unilaterally declaring war on Iran and attacking Iran. So it's, we'll see. You know, and I think you could play out a lot of the issues that we get asked about on, well, does it have the votes in the Senate? And if when the president vetoes that, well, you don't have the votes to override that veto. Yes, yes, yes. But what it does do is it establishes pressure. Pressure from real voters, people who I represent, people that, you know, my, you know, 434 colleagues also represent, to say, hey, this is worthy of debate. It's worthy of our inclusion. We should be in this together to kind of map out a path forward for securing the United States and our allies. And that should all be done sort of in daylight. So I do think that puts pressure, and it gives, you know, the president likes to talk about how he has a mandate. And I think whenever we're able to show that, no, this is not unanimous, no, you do not have the American people behind you, no, this is really important that, you know, we come together, we debate these things because there is a lack of consensus. It's an important message to send to him and to his administration.
You know, 11 of the 12 appropriation bills are now wrapped up,
Yes.
but there's one you could not agree on, and that's the modification of the Homeland Security funding bill. And right now, many of your members of the Democratic side are saying, we're not going to fund this bill until we make modifications on ICE, making sure that they have the cameras on their bodies, they have a judicial warrant as opposed to administrative, and they also want the mask to be removed.
Pretty common sense stuff.
Yeah, and but I think the Republicans in the White House are saying, look, you're also holding up funding for TSA, Coast Guard, FEMA, and you need to pass this now, this bill, and I think in light of what happened this past weekend, they may use that as a tool to say, see.
Well, how irresponsible of him
Right.
to proceed with
Right.
attacking Iran without this core funding being in place. You know, we can have a debate over whether there was an imminent threat to our country and whether this attack was warranted. I'm sure we were going to. But if you're the president of the United States and you're going to attack another country where you know there could be consequences for the United States people here in the homeland, you better damn well make sure that we're secure here. And by not having that funding package, by not working with Democrats to either separate ICE and CPB funding out of it so that we could at least put some guardrails there and then pass everything else, I think I consider that completely irresponsible on behalf of the president and the administration.
Is there any thought that the Democrats have put together an amendment to fund the
Yes.
Coast Guard,
Yes.
fund TSA and
Yes. This is-
Secret Service?
I mean, this is all completely unnecessary. One, we make the laws. You know, Congresswoman DeLauro from Connecticut has already offered a version where you fund Department of Homeland Security minus CPB and ICE, because that's the part that requires more negotiation and more work. And we are negotiable on that, right? The Republicans could come and talk to us about what their concerns are, right? We don't want, I mean, the list is long of the things that we would like, but certainly we don't want U.S. citizens to be detained or deported. We've seen that. We want an investigation into Pretty and Good and the violence that we've seen. We obviously, Jim mentioned so many of the obvious ones, like taking the masks off, having identification, having a warrant, body cameras, things that are they're table stakes with law enforcement in our country. But certainly there's a path forward to taking those pieces off the table so that we can reach agreement on them while also passing the broader Department of Homeland Security package.
Now, there's talk that the House GOP leaders are planning a second vote on this DHS funding, I think, on Thursday of this week. And when they last voted on it, and in early January 22nd, I think 7 House Democrats voted for it.
Yeah.
So, where do you see this bill going on Thursday?
Yeah, I think we have to get into our caucus to sort of figure out what the, where the issues are. I think, as I mentioned, Congresswoman DeLauro's put together a thoughtful proposal that should be brought up to the floor that I think we could all get behind. This is something that kind of goes well beyond Minneapolis. I mean, there are representatives like myself who are in districts all across the country where people are really activated on this issue. They really want us to stand up and hold the line. And I feel that our entire caucus has, felt that. There's real fear out there. I mean, look, I represent a lot of gateway cities. I've got Lawrence and Lowell, and people aren't going to work. They're not going to church. They're not sending their kids to school. They're not showing up to their immigration appointments. Because they have a fear that now data is being used to surveil people. Social media accounts are part of that data collection effort by our government. They know that they're being tracked so that when they show up to something that we want them to show up to, they're going to just get whisked away by a masked agent. And so, I think there is, we've seen the numbers. We know that the American people want us to rein ICE in. They also want us to get the hell, get rid of Kristi Noem. There is the incompetence, just total disregard for norms in our country that she has overseen warrants her removal from office. And I think the American people are behind us on that. And so, certainly we don't want to lose many members of our caucus on this. But I think for us it's really about representing the people that we have the great privilege of voting for in Washington and voting our conscience on that vote on Thursday.
Last month you released a new report, I think it was called Privacy, Trust
It's a
and
long
Effective,
title.
Privacy, Trust, and Effective Government, is that the title of it? Okay. And it's a blueprint for modernizing the Privacy Act. So
Of 1974. The
Wow.
Privacy Act of 1974, everyone. That's the last time. Post-Watergate is when we wrote that original legislation.
the year I
Sorry.
was born. Yeah. So I was wondering if you could speak to what the findings were in the report, and then
Yeah.
needless to say, what role do you think Congress can play when it comes to protecting individuals' data?
Yeah. It's a great question. This isn't one that gets a lot of headlines, but certainly I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee, so we spend a lot of time on protecting kids online, commercial privacy, and coming up with a comprehensive privacy bill finally in our country. I think at the beginning of last year, DOJ was, sort of breaking in. It felt like they were breaking into agencies. They were, pulling lots of data off of agencies' computers. Nobody really had any visibility into what they were doing, what they were using that data for, but I think everybody universally just felt vulnerable. And then the second sort of wave that kind of informed this report was ICE. All of a sudden, DOJ gets all this data, and then we start hearing that IRS data, Social Security data is being used in these ICE raids. And so, for us on my team, a light bulb just went off to say, wait, what is the process of securing Americans' data with our government, right? We spend a lot of time on, putting guardrails in on, Meta and Google and the big tech companies, but what do we actually have in place to protect us? And there it started. The Government Privacy Act was written in 1974. It has not meaningfully been touched since then. The definitions are outdated. There's no mention of privacy enhancing technology and all the strides that we've made there. And there really isn't laws around surveilling, sharing, who gets to collect what, and so that is a big problem. So we worked with tech companies, advocates, nonprofits, people who have really spent their life here to request information for how would we go about updating this law, and that was the staff report that we launched last month. Was a reflection of all the data that we had collected, and the goal is to turn that into what I hope to be bipartisan legislation in the next Congress when we have the gavel, because I do think that'll be the next opportunity for us to really make a meaningful update to that law. I've shared it with my Republican colleagues and if they want to get a jump on things, but this absolutely should be bipartisan. And I think it's something that, while people may not read about it in the headlines, it's one of those things that is deeply important to people's personal privacy and how they trust the government with sharing information. And having the government be the stewards of their most sensitive data.
Longtime chairman of the Energy and the Commerce Committee, John Dingell of Detroit, justified his committee's vast involvement in so many activities. He'd always say that if it moves, it's energy. If it doesn't, it's commerce. So as a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, what issues are you working on, other than the data privacy, that would be good news for New Englanders here?
Yes, it's a great question. And I think the one thing that all members of the Energy and Commerce Committee agree on is protecting our vast jurisdiction. I mean, we don't want any committee coming in and taking a piece of, or a policy issue that, we feel as though it belongs under our umbrella. But, the committee is working on a whole host of issues. We recently just passed a bunch of healthcare riders that were, for those of you in healthcare, I know you were tracking this because they were the ones that were cut from the end of year package in 2024. And it was really just a shame because it was in this, I guess, a foreboding, but this Musk's tweet of like how this is not how legislation should be passed. There's way too many pages, and no one can really understand it. But man, oh man, there was some great work in those pages. Things like accelerating kids' access to care, which I know I couldn't have done without my friends at Boston Children's Hospital, because kids in Iowa who are waiting a complex surgery and want to come to a hospital, a world-class hospital like Children's, they often, they often have to wait months, and some kids die waiting because they can't get the Medicaid approvals for all the different surgeons in the children's operating room approved. And that should not happen in our country. We should streamline that, and now we have, because that bipartisan piece of legislation passed, creating HOPE reauthorization, which allows for pediatric priority review vouchers so that we can get more rare diseases that hurt our kids, through the FDA pipeline faster. Something that I've championed and worked in a bipartisan way on. And there were so many others. There's a lot we're going to work on in healthcare. I mean, we've had a couple of key hearings this year. We did one with the big insurance companies, one with the big pharmacies. We're scheduled to do one next week with the providers, including hospitals. And, these hearings are great. I think that there are lots of opportunities to surface some of the problems that translate into higher costs for consumers. But, it's with the backdrop of, Republicans just making the biggest cut to our health care in our country's history. I mean, nearly $1 trillion to Medicaid. Massachusetts is going to feel that to the tune of $3.5 billion at a time when Stewart already screwed us and we need to stabilize our hospital system. 324,000 Massachusetts residents maybe are going to have to drop their health care because of the increased work requirements, these like insane eligibility requirements, having to get redesignated every 6 months. I mean, that is just a paperwork disaster for people who are eligible but have to jump through hoop after hoop to show that they're eligible. And then the ACA tax cuts, sort of as we're debating all of or having these hearings on how to drive down costs, well, we're seeing millions of people have to forego health care because they can't afford their premiums. And so there's a bit of a sort of hypocrisy around we're going to work on this, but yet the thing that's worked we're taking away. This week we're going to do a markup of COSA, which is the Kids Online Safety Act. Very important to me. I'm a former tech executive. I know how powerful targeted advertising is. I worked in the industry. I also have, 11 and 15-year-old daughters, and I want to see guardrails for our kids. I know how addictive those devices are. I know the collection of data is just unchecked. And the level of targeting that goes into keeping our kids on their devices longer is causing real mental health problems with our children. So we'll see if we can get to a bipartisan agreement. And certainly there's other issues we've been taking up. AI, I think the big thing with artificial intelligence that we had to sort of battle with our Republican colleagues was not preempting state law, not putting this moratorium so that Massachusetts has no power to safeguard Massachusetts constituents from harmful actions by AI. But like the reality is, we need to get to a place where we come up with a federal framework, one that is great for innovation, because I've been to life science companies, I've been to med device companies, I've been to healthcare providers. You can see that when AI is unleashed in a responsible way, that there are enormous benefits. But we also have to protect consumers, and we have not done that work yet. And that falls within our committee. And I am hopeful. There are a lot of bipartisan working groups around this issue, so it is one of the places where I'm optimistic that we can get there. And then lastly, we had a hearing on I'm spacing autonomous vehicles. Thank you. Oof, a lot of hearings. And that has enormous consequence for, Massachusetts. And so figuring out, what that is going to look like so that we're, balancing, safety and workforce issues is really important. So, and one that takes into account the needs of a shared roadway, right? Not just other cars, but pedestrians and bicyclists and all the folks who are using our roadways is really important. So, as Jim mentioned, Energy and Commerce it's a broad jurisdiction I didn't even bring up. The energy issues, the telecom issues, I kind of stuck to my subcommittees, which are the health and the commerce, manufacturing, and trade subcommittees. But there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to be done there.
I mean, you mentioned the reconciliation bill that passed last year. You know, a significant amount of money is going to be cut there on Medicare, and an awful lot of people are going to lose their coverage. The ACA subsidies have already expired. That's going to cause another burden. The president indicated recently, I have a bill, and believe it or not, it's called the Great Healthcare Plan. Have you seen it? Have you looked at it? Is there anything in the bill that you say, you know what, I like that section. I don't like the entire bill, but I like this section of that. Has anyone looked at it on the Democratic side?
We've all looked at the words on the paper. It would be irresponsible for us not to, but it's just words on paper. I think that is what people have to sort of remember. I mean, like, people will go to, we'll just use an example of Trump RX. You should go, check it out. It's not what you would expect after listening to him tout it at the podium. You know, it's you basically, you go, you give the government more of your data, and if you're a candidate for, you know, one of these coupons, I mean, it's basically good RX, right? For a narrow number of prescriptions, mainly GLP-1s and IVF, you know, drugs. And so, you know, there's a lot of fanfare, there's a lot of branding, and there's a lot of talk. But I think the reality still is, Republicans in Congress and this administration, they want to rip apart the Affordable Care Act, and they have nothing to replace it with. You can't replace comprehensive health care with HSAs. I can get behind health savings accounts. Again, I think that there's a role for them to play. I think people are really underestimating what a catastrophic medical emergency costs in this country. And while what we have is not perfect, and Democrats, you know, we were in a huddle last week at our issues retreat around what solutions, what affirmative agenda are we going to tell the American people that they can expect from us when we have the majority and when we have the Senate and the presidency down the road. Like, we know that the system that we have today is not sustainable, it's not affordable, and it needs fixing. But taking away the things that people are relying on, the subsidies so that they can afford their premiums, the ability to bring their kids to a doctor, the provider taxes that states like Massachusetts need so that they can fund their safety net community hospitals, Lawrence General, Lowell General. I only have community hospitals in my district. Like, there's no plan B if one of those suckers goes down. People are left without health care. And you know where we're seeing it? In Neshoba Valley, where their hospital is gone. And the anxiety that people have that they are not going to get to a hospital in time in an emergency, it's palpable. So, you know, for us, and when I look at this, you know, whether it's Trump RX, HSAs, giving money to consumers rather than insurers, all of that sounds great. None of it is written in statute. None of it really translates into lower costs and more accessibility for consumers. So I don't think we're going to see that until Democrats take back the majority and we really get serious about having a conversation about how to fix our healthcare system in the country.
You know, in recent years, we've seen a real boom in the development of data centers throughout the country, and there are people who think it's great. It might create some new jobs here, but there's also people who are concerned about the energy that would be required to build these.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on how we should progress on in New England in building them?
Yeah, look, data centers are here. We have data centers in Massachusetts. I know I have one in Lowell, and it's the cause for a lot of debate. And for those of you know, I got elected in 2018 with that big class. Following the first Trump administration midterm. So Abigail Spanberger was in my class. She just got elected governor of Virginia. Mikey Sherrill was in my class. She just got elected governor of New Jersey. And data centers are a big deal in both of those states. I think one of the things that really is important is, look, I grew up in a household that lived paycheck to paycheck. I remember my mom, all the bills spread out on the table, and, her picking, which ones we could maybe delay till the next month and which ones had to be paid. I just vividly remember those conversations. People are going through that right now. People are really making hard choices around if they're going to pay their utility bill, which one, electric or gas. What does that mean for the rest of the bills? And so I do think it's really important that if these data centers are going to get built and they're going to increase the consumption of energy and water, that they pay for that. These are big, huge tech companies that, consumers who are already under a lot of stress cannot subsidize. And so we do have to have a debate around this sort of, nationally, but it's already happening in communities and in states like ours. So, look, we know how important data centers are to us, winning on innovation, on AI, and a whole bunch of other things that are really important to our economic security. But we have to make sure along the way that consumers that they're not getting hurt and they're not paying the bill for that alone.
In January, the Trump administration made abrupt changes in the substance abuse and mental health service administration
a
program.
little bit.
But you and your colleague were able to ultimately reverse that back after some severe backlash, I might add.
Yeah.
I believe you're also the co-chair of the bipartisan mental health and substance abuse. Talk about how you were able to reverse that change that he wanted.
That came together in seconds, which is really hard to do in Washington. Those things take much longer horizon. But the SAMHSA, cuts, it immediately, I could tell walking the halls of Congress that people were calling their representative. Because one, these are programs that help people with mental health and substance abuse. They rely on this funding, right? They rely on the grant, they piece it together so that they can be there for a person in crisis or help prevent the next crisis. And so it was quite easy to pull together a letter very quickly saying this cannot happen. In fact, we just authorized these funds. I think it was weeks ago we had done that. And we were able to put 100 people on a letter. And as we were doing that, because our task force on mental health and substance abuse is bipartisan, we were getting Republicans to call the administration this is a misguided cut, this is bad policy. We agree on this. So I think all of that came together very quickly, and we were able to avert what would have been a disaster for so many of the programs. I know some of them are represented here today, but ones that really make a difference in our communities.
One of the powers that the Congress has is that they can issue tariffs. And the Supreme Court ruled against the administration just recently, I think 6-3. And we have about $175 billion in revenue sitting somewhere in the administration. How and why? How do you think that should be distributed, and to who?
It's a great question, and across the board, so many people have felt the impact of tariffs. Consumers have had to pay. That the tariffs that have been passed along to them. Small businesses have many cases gone out of business because the tariffs have just exceeded their cost of doing business. And so, you know, for us, I think it's simple. You got to pay the tariffs back to the people who paid them, and you know, there will be enormous pressure, especially on our larger corporations, to pass those savings back to their, you know, consumers. But I really do think about our small businesses in this in this scenario. They paid tariffs. They were unlawful. They never should have been there, you know, to begin with, and they deserve that, you know, money back. There's already legislation, you know, to that effect. If you paid a tariff, that you get the refund to that tariff, and you know that's you know, instead of working with Congress, and I just, you know, look, you all know I was a former staffer, and so it wasn't that long ago that Congress was able to operate this way, where we would, you know, figure out like, okay, what are we going to do about these tariffs? President doubles down on them, right? Ignores the court, says we're going to use a different authority. It's like the most tone-deaf decision ever, because people understand now what tariffs are. They know it is an illegal sales tax on them, and it is the most unpopular thing right now that this president is you know, continuing in this country by using tariff these tariffs. And so you know, I think that there's an opportunity for us to work with Republicans. I will say Democrats, as scrappy as all hell, we do take advantage of this these really slim margins to convince a handful of Republicans, 3 in some cases, to just do the right thing. You know, let's make sure that we give relief to people where it's deserved, especially given the Supreme Court decision. So that is a work in progress, but one that I think you know, we'll hear more about in the next couple of weeks.
The Trump administration has been abundantly clear on its position on offshore wind, not only denouncing as a reliable source of energy, they've actually issued work stoppage on projects like Revolution. I mean, it's 80% completed, it's union built, it's going to generate a great deal of energy for New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and yet he put a work stop, but the courts are battling to keep these projects afloat. Your thoughts and what Congress can do more to generate the support for wind projects?
Yeah. This is probably like more you know, walk the halls conversation, right? Because it's been frustrating that more members of the Republican conference, when they talk about an all of the above energy strategy, they are not saying solar and wind, even though many of them in their states have made those investments and they're reaping the reward of those investments. I do think this one's going to, you know, this one is probably not going to be sorted out in this Congress. You know, while I do think that the court case for Vineyard Wind is going to be, you know, a good one, you know, the reality is there is a huge opportunity cost of us, one, stopping projects, as you mentioned, that are 80% complete, and then not investing in so many more, which would give, you know, reliability and predictability, you know, to our energy needs. So this is, you know, it's this is just one where the president doesn't like it, and so he has sort of gotten everybody in line on that, because, you know, I am also the chair or the co-chair of the Bipartisan Fusion Caucus, right? Like, this is, you know, unlimited, carbonless, you know, cost-effective energy, right? That is the promise of fusion. For those of you that know, Commonwealth Fusion is in Devens, which is part of my district. It is so important. We have been pushing so hard with the Secretary of Energy as well to get the investments made, to get the R&D money, to give regulatory clarity so that private investment can continue to flow to companies who are literally in a race to win here. You know, I'm a former athlete. I want us to win, right? I think we're well positioned to win on fusion, which will have incredible, just incredible benefit, not just to our country, but to the world. And it's happening right here now. China's putting billions of dollars into this. Great Britain is putting billions of dollars into it, and the United States is just not keeping pace. And so I think, and I've long believed, we take it up, we talk about it a lot in energy commerce, we need to be making these investments in clean energy. We're seeing it pay off, and now is not the time for us to walk away. And what I try to do is use the coalition that I do with Fusion, because it is bipartisan, and have that seep into other areas so that we are thinking more long term about our energy needs and stability than just what this president wants.
Last year the Republicans in Congress passed the big beautiful bill without any Democrats, but there are murmurs that there may be a second reconciliation bill coming forward. If there is a bill, what would be in it? Last question.
Hope that wasn't on camera anywhere. I like it. What? So first of all, their big beautiful bill, as they like to call it, is deeply unpopular. They're not going home, touting it, the way that you would when you pass your signature piece of legislation. You use all of your, sort of political capital, put all of your priorities into a bill. Like it is not sort of giving them a return at all. And so that was hard fought for them, right? Like that was a really difficult piece of legislation for them to come together and, agree on. I just don't see it happening again. I think Mike Johnson is talking about it a bit because he's getting a lot of pressure from, his Freedom Caucus and others. They want more spending cuts. There are a whole lot of other projects that they want to see reflected in another bill. I think if you listen to Leader Thune, it's like a very different story. I think he knows that he's up against some pretty big constraints with the Byrd rule and just with the dynamics of the House and what could pass there, but not in the Senate. So while they've talked about more cuts, another tax package, and a few other things, I really haven't seen anything sort of come together that would build consensus in the Republican conference. But it's certainly something that we're watching. We're watching very closely.
At one time we did redistricting every decennial, every 10 years. Now it's every 4 years, could be 2 years. Texas started it, California, Ohio, Indiana said no. North Carolina's going to do it. Maybe Maryland, apparently the Senate president said no. Is there any legislation?
Virginia.
Is there any legislation to stop this maddening piece of redistricting where someone can come up next time and say, let's do it every 2 years and let's do it this year?
Yeah.
Can we go back to decennial every 10 years?
Yeah, I hope so. So I was elected in 2018. Our HR 1, which was you've sort of the way we number our bills. HR 1 is obviously our biggest priorities. And so after I was sworn in 2019, our HR 1 was a whole bunch of government reforms. Redistricting was part of that. I don't think anybody in this country thinks that the way our lines are drawn in districts today is fair or transparent. And it really does contribute to a lot of distrust in our government when lines are drawn to pick voters rather than voters picking their representatives. So I do think that the only time we've really brought forth measures on ending gerrymandering and having, reform to redistricting is when Democrats have been in charge. So, I do look forward to us fixing this this arms race, frankly. And I mean, look, the reason why we're here where we are is because of what happened in Texas. There wouldn't have been a Prop 50 in California if Texas hadn't redone their lines. And by the way, like the second time they've redrawn their districts, right? They're already had gerrymandered to the point where, Democrats were at an incredible disadvantage, and then they did it again. So I will say, and look, knowing full well that this is deeply unpopular, at least Prop 50 went to the voters of California. In Texas, it was just done behind closed doors in the dead of night, signed by Governor Abbott. That's done. But I do think that what Americans want to see from people in Washington is to dispense with this sort of, tit for tat and just get to a place where, that they can trust that the lines have been drawn based on our census, and it's in a way where they get, their vote matters and they get to pick their elected representation.
If the Democrats gain control of the chamber after the midterm, what should we expect?
Yeah, it's a great question. We put a lot of thought into how we're going to basically how we're going to rebuild trust with the American people. I mean, I have a lot of humility around what people think of Democrats right now. It's not as though as the president's approval ratings are falling into the toilet that Democrats are doing this, right? Like, we have work to do too. And granted, 2025 was spent with us really drawing a contrast, because so many of the policies that were being enacted into law, whether it was through reconciliation or through executive order, were really bad for the American people, and we had to hold the line, use every lever that was available to us to either stop it or to make folks back home know what's at stake and that there's a better path forward. We do have to turn the corner and tell people what we're for. What does it mean to embrace a democratic agenda on lowering costs? How does that impact housing and grocery prices and utility bills? Like, what does that look like? How do we fix our broken healthcare system? And obviously one that's on the top of mind for Americans is what's the democratic policy around keeping our communities safe? It's clear that while there are many people, and even in my district, where a lot of folks voted for this president because they weren't happy with the border, and they voted for him, to secure our border. What he has done since has been a bridge way too far. This is not what people signed up for. While they can, maybe agree with a policy that gets rid of and deports violent criminals and gang members in our communities, I don't know a single mayor who disagrees with that. They're not for arresting grandmothers or people who have done nothing more than come to our country to work to provide a better future for their kids. They're not for detaining young kids, as we've seen in Texas and elsewhere. So I think we have to articulate what our optimistic path forward is. And then certainly I think one of the things that we're going to be forced to do next year is hold this administration accountable. There's been a lot that's happened in broad daylight. There's been a lot that's happened behind closed doors, and I think it's really important that we do what Congress hasn't done in the last 14 or 12 months, and that's have hearings. That's have oversight hearings. It's use the Congress power of oversight to make sure that we're holding this administration accountable, because there's been a lot of corruption by this administration. There's been a lot of self-dealing, and then there's been a complete lack of accountability by the legislative branch. And I do think that the American people want a check and balance on their government. And they want to see that power restored to Congress before it goes too far that it risks being forgotten or diluted.
Sounds like there'll be an awful lot of investigations at different committees in the administration.
Yeah, look, I think, with having the majority in one branch of government, which is what the midterms, and who knows what will happen in the Senate, but like as I sit in the House, I think your hand is always out to work in a bipartisan way, to say, how can we, fix these issues. But there's also enormous pressure on, if we're going to continue to make it harder for people to access their health care, if we're going to keep organizations that are reliant on, SAMHSA grants or NIH research, like, we have a responsibility to have hearings to say, these are the real world stories, this is what's playing out across our country. When we defund NIH grants to Massachusetts or to the Chan School at UMass, there's somebody waiting for a cure that doesn't get it. Clinical trials have been canceled. People who have had just their hope ripped right out from underneath them. And those stories need to be told because, I know companies, it's really hard to operate and to forecast and to grow and to invest when you have instability and uncertainty. It's just as hard on American families. And so for us, I do think that it's not just about investigating because, we want to hear Trump say witch hunt over and over again. It's so that we can really bring, law and order and stability and certainty to the programs that we know work, to businesses that we want to see grow, and to American families who really deserve to know, like, when we say paycheck to paycheck, it's, they really need to have like an understanding of how they are going to balance their checkbooks so that they can, and that's just table stakes, never mind giving them something better than that, right? I mean, right now all we're fighting for is to make sure people can afford to keep a roof over their heads and like not have to turn down the heat overnight. Like, it should be so much more than that. They should be able to have the same opportunities that all of us had, to go from maybe a family that lived paycheck to paycheck, but to really thrive, to go on vacation, to send your kids to college, to help your child like put a down payment on a home that they can afford and raise a family in. So I do think that we have a lot to do. Certainly oversight is part of it, but then mapping out the plan for what we will do differently so that we can rebuild trust with our voters again.
Well, we trust you to make the right decisions, and I hope you found this informative, enlightening, and obviously Congresswoman has an awful lot on her plate, to say the least, but we're very fortunate to have her as part of the delegation and as somebody who moves around New England and talks to all of our members. Lori Trahan is somebody that they rave about because she's there to do the right thing. I used it yesterday with Chris Pappas, but I really believe it applies to Lori Trahan, that some people go to Washington to make a name. Lori Trahan goes to Washington to make a difference, and that's what she's doing. I have one quick business item to attend before we conclude. That is to conduct a very brief, and I love this, annual members meeting to elect new members of the Council Board of Directors who were nominated by the board in 2025. New England Council's annual meeting is now called to order. Percentage of the council members, about 60 members, constitute a quorum under the bylaws, and we have surpassed, needless to say, that number. So, needless to say, also a quorum is present. A copy of the resolution nominating the new directors was provided in the meeting notice by electronic mail on February 3rd. I don't know about the privacy on that, but we hope that they did get it. And was also available to you for review as you entered this room. I'd also like to make a motion to adopt the resolution electing those directors who were nominated for election in 2025. Do I hear a second?
Second.
The question of adopting the resolution will be determined by voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? I don't hear it. Ayes have it, the resolution is adopted.
You'd be great to
I'm trying. There'll be no further business to conduct before this meeting. I would like to make a motion to adjourn our annual meeting. And do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? I believe the ayes have it. And the annual meeting is now adjourned.
Wow. Congratulations.